Hey everyone, it's Damian from the Student Physio podcast. I hope you're well. We've got an interesting podcast for you today where we're going to be interviewing and speaking to Archie James, who is an MSc graduate. He graduated over the summer and from King's, and he was also the academic secretary for the Physio Society for my cohort of new starters when we were year ones. So we don't know Archie very well, but we know him a little bit from his contacts with us, and we had a very good time getting to know him a little bit over those initial months in university, and we found all of his input very useful. So it's really interesting to now have a chat to him now that he's qualified, and he's now moving on in his career. No Sophie today, as you can probably already see. She's unwell at time of recording, so it's just me you're left with, unfortunately, and I will try my best. As always, please do get in contact with us, give us some feedback, give us some information, tell us what you want to hear from the podcast, tell us what you do get out of it, what you don't get out of it, and any good information like that is always really useful. You can contact me on all our social medias. Instagram is the best one, which is Student Physio Podcast, and if failing that, you can always contact me directly on my KCL email address, which is damian.taylor@kcl.ac.uk. And similarly, Sophie's open to contact if you find her on Instagram as well. Give her a little message if need be. So we're going to jump straight into it now, and look forward to hearing your feedback and information from you about what you thought of this one as well. And I'd like to introduce to you
Archie James.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How are you?
All good. I realise that's the classic podcast thing to say, so thank you so much for having me on here. But
no problem at all. No, that's good. That's good. That's absolutely brilliant. So as I said in the intro, Archie helped my cohort out much with his as he was the academic rep for the society. So what we want to do, Archie, if it's okay with you, we just want to find out a bit more about you, what makes you tick, your background, all that kind of stuff. And then if it's okay, we'll come on to the academic repping side afterwards, if that's all right.
Sure.
So tell us about yourself. Who's Archie James?
Oh God, that's such a philosophical question. No, it's not. I wish it was that exciting. Oh God, yeah. So who is Archie James? Just recently graduated Physio. Oh God, I think that's about it. A Suffolk country boy at the minute. I don't know. Do you want me to give you a bit about, I don't know, where I started to now, or?
Yeah, absolutely. How did you get into physio?
Oh, so it kind of starts. So my previous degree, I went to a ballet school and did all of that, and then I ended up working in a ballet company, and that's all. It was all very intense, but I really enjoyed working with the physios there. We had them in ballet school and in a ballet company, as injuries are quite prevalent. And I found them really fascinating. I loved kind of their thought process and what was going on, and the anatomy charts on the side. They were all very exciting and mysterious. And so when I eventually decided to leave my job and move back home and think, what the hell do I do? Found out about the MSc pre-reg because I had a degree beforehand.
Yeah.
Blagged my way in, and 2 years later, here I am. That's basically my life in a nutshell.
Wow, that's amazing. So just a supplementary on that one then, how did you find the challenges going from having an arts background, an arts degree, to switching to more scientific and more academia based?
Oh, I mean, absolutely petrifying, terrifying, because I hadn't even heard of PubMed before I even started. And there was this, in the ballet world, you're not exactly writing an essay with references to someone who's measured how long it takes to put on tights this way to that way.
Sure.
It's, it's very, artsy.
Yeah.
So to suddenly have to not only back up what you're saying with a lot of evidence, but to be able to critique it and have this kind of scientific mind on was a whole new learning experience. So it wasn't just learning the anatomy, the physiology, the various bits, which again are complex. It was just a whole new way of thinking that I'd never experienced before. But also, I think on my application, I may have sold myself in a way that perhaps wasn't as true. So obviously, I might have chucked myself into the deep end anyway.
Right. Okay. And the challenges of academic writing. I don't know anything about a ballet degree. I have to hold my hands up and say, and I'm completely naive on that. How did you find, sitting down and writing 3,000, 4,000 word essays?
Well, I guess to highlight it, if I compare both my dissertations, my dissertation at ballet school was what was it? It was something to do with comparing the structure of music compared to a solo. So looking at the kind of the phrasing, the musical structure, and then looking at the choreography of this solo and how they kind of contrasted and compared. My systematic review that I did just not too long ago was a comparison of the psychometric properties of hop and jump tests in pre-adolescence. So very different.
Very different.
Very different. Yeah, and just like I said about this referencing idea, but the main thing being the critical thinking, which was that is and it's a really tough one, and I think it's a really a continuous process. But yeah, I always think reading's quite a skill.
Yeah.
I remember the first paper I read, it took me and it wasn't that hard of a paper. It just took me 3 days because I would keep falling asleep or I would not be able to engage. And I notice as I go along that's definitely improved. It still takes me some time, but yeah, that was a whole new world, especially the statistics side of things. I mean,
wow, exactly. We've got that coming up later this year, and some people have told us we need to strap on our big boy pants for those.
Yeah,
big girl pants.
I'm still going through papers now and just having to highlight and think, what the hell does this mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, just opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. Your experience at King's, obviously a 2-year degree, doing your masters. Your first year, were you COVID free in your first year? Or was it the end of your first year that's when it started to come in? Is that right?
It was mainly towards the end of the first year. So because it's the condensed kind of bachelor's, we would have where the first year BSc finished. That was kind of when COVID really kicked off, and so but we had a few months where we were then doing some of the second year stuff,
right?
More into the respiratory side of things. So I timed it quite well. I'd moved back home, and so I spent a lot of time at my kitchen table, on Teams whilst everything was trying to be figured out, and it was all. Yeah, I really felt for the lecturers. I mean, what a challenge!
Big challenge, massive. To go from a full-time academic degree for both MSc and BSc, and then dragging it through to making sure that everybody's at home, everybody's timetabled then correctly. And I mean, I know they don't do the timetable, but they're involved in it, and all of that kind of stuff. Nightmare.
Absolutely, yeah. But it was. I guess I would consider myself a fairly dedicated or at least disciplined person, so I could kind of log on and just try and get it done. But obviously, and I'm sure this is I speak for a fair number of people, that it was such a shame to have missed kind of half of university and just being present in the lecture hall and just missed something, which is a shame.
There's that human quality.
Although some of us wonder, the silver lining maybe would have been exams. Would we have done better or worse? Who knows?
I think the silver lining that we took was the Alistair's anatomy classes. because we still yet haven't had anatomy class from Alistair, but we've had others this year, but the fact that when you're working at home on Teams, you can pause the lecture and then rewind it and listen to it again, listen to that bit again. So 1.5 hour lecture can end up taking 3 hours, but you can't do that. You can't do that live, can you? Yeah. So
no. And so you haven't had any dissection or anything like that?
Oh, we did. Yeah, we did in the first year. Okay. We were in. So our year was made up of, in the first year was made up of 4 days of online lectures, and then 1 day a week we were in for practical lessons and dissection and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, so, nice. Yeah, I was the weirdo that would just kind of, whilst other people were kind of looking away, I was, as soon as they said put gloves on and go in, I was diving in there, straight in there. Into the extra sessions. Yeah. I love it.
I mean, I haven't done any extra sessions, but I always enjoy the anatomy lesson. I had to kind of, the dissection lesson, I should say, sorry. I had to kind of, get over an initial, squeamishness is the wrong word, but an initial apprehension. But as soon as I was over that, I'm very keen to kind of learn. So it's good. Thank you for that. So what about your, your personal experiences while you were at university, both your first year and your second year? How did you find interacting with the rest of your cohort and then also the BScs as well?
Oh, good question. How did I find interacting? How did I? I'm trying to remember. My brain's, it's not what it once was. I don't know whether physio as a profession and as a kind of degree attracts people that are very comfortable in socializing and meeting new people, because as a profession we meet new people all the time. So
yes,
I never felt it was quite funny because there were quite a few people who knew each other from their universities and everything, and it felt like a scene from some kind of playground thing. I was stood and I could see the boys talking over there, and I kind of just shuffled over and just joined in. Can I play with you? But they've, and I guess I've come from a very different world, a very artsy and probably slightly flamboyant kind of pocket of the universe.
Yes.
So to suddenly be surrounded by a bunch of rugby lads and everything, there was something that I was a little bit timid, or a bit, like, say, apprehensive, which is kind of all more on me than anything. And
right.
They were very, very warm, very welcoming. So there was no problem with that. And I think because our year, the first year particularly, it's such a melting pot of different ages, experiences, just people in general, that you kind of just get stuck in, really. My experience from a social side was absolutely fine. I like to consider myself a fairly nice person.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and you were in the Physio Society. Were you in there for the whole? Were you taking a role for the whole of your time, or did just a second year that you took the role?
Yeah, just my second year. I think first year I was very much again, I was aware of how little I knew and how much I was going to have to knuckle down. So I didn't take on too many extra either activities or responsibilities. It was only until second year I thought, okay, no, I can. I think I might be able to offer something.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. So with that in mind, I mean, as I'm sure most people who are listening know, you were the academic secretary for the year ones. And as part of this, I thought it'd be fun to have on the current academic secretary for year ones, who's Millie, also a dancer, ex-dancer background, and unfortunately she lost her voice, so she can't come on. But she sent me some questions, so I'm gonna just ask you a few of her questions, if that's okay. First of all, she said she would like to say a massive, huge thank you, and I echo this as well. You actually made the first year a lot more enjoyable for us, with everything that you gave us and everything that you. Don't mean to embarrass you, but just absolutely true. I think that I didn't realize that kind of thing happened at university, that there was this academic support from above years. And it was something that I really appreciated and Millie appreciated as well. I'm sure everybody else did too. So thank you for that.
Good. I'm glad.
So she wanted to know how you went from having quite a high level of support in year one to having pretty much nothing in year two. How did you manage that challenge?
Is that support in terms of, again, talking more from academic rep side, or support in
from your own academic rep, because you had an academic rep in year one, didn't you? And then there was nothing in year two, or very little in year two anyway. How did you manage that?
Yeah, I guess so. In the MSc for the second year, predominantly we're doing placements. So a lot of what I've been doing for the past year has been kind of consolidating what I learned in the year and then the extra chunk we did, and kind of putting that in place. So it felt a bit less, there was less new material, and more of just trying to kind of go over and put into practice what we had learned. And I think having done a year already and gained some skills and learning how suits me best was probably the most helpful, now that there wasn't as much kind of help from the year above, if there was one. And we would kind of help each other as a year, if there was something we were struggling with. I think because we were all online and at home, that we kind of adapted and would FaceTime each other if we didn't quite get something, or read over one another's essays and help each other out. And I think that's a testament to my year, that we were willing to help each other out and had a kind of a close-knit group.
Yeah,
I'd say that was mostly it. And
you got that shared experience, haven't you, of all being in the same boat, which you have naturally because of university, but then also because you're all working from home, you've got that shared experience too. So, thank you for that, Archie. So what about teaching? So I hear that you've done some teaching after you've finished your MSc. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so I mean, with my role as the academic rep, I found that I really enjoyed it. And not only was it really nice to be able to kind of help people out with areas they might have been struggling with, but for me, well, on a selfish note, it's very useful to kind of go back, reflect on what you think add to it. And I always figure if you can teach something, you're probably quite proficient at it. And so as I was kind of going through, I had some meetings with some of the lecturers just to talk about my future, the big scary future, and what I might want to do. And I guess the advantage, but also the difficulty with physio, is that there are so many branches, so many areas you can go into, that there's so many that I was interested in, not only from the neuro MSK respiratory side, but research and lecturing or teaching. And so I kind of voiced this to Laura and Lorna and people like that, and I guess maybe they had some faith in me and said if it's something I wanted to do, they'd be happy to kind of facilitate that. And so on our final day of at university, we did have a little something on the rooftop at King's, pizza and prosecco. It's wild. And I saw Lorna, our respiratory lead, and she said if there's a big shuffle around, so they might need someone for practicals. And I of course said, if you need help, absolutely happy to. And so I had my first practical teaching session. So I came in and taught manual muscle testing, which is I guess part of the bread and butter. So I took it very seriously. And I really enjoyed it, and I kind of added in a few extra bits, just looking at, because I think maybe because it's still so new to me, like research and kind of critically thinking about everything we're doing. Is it valid? Does it have a place, and what does it tell us? They're really important questions.
Yes.
So looking at things, I think they also had a goniometry session, which of course you can look into the research there, but looking at manual muscle testing and is it able to distinguish a difference? What are the limitations to it and how does it affect our practice? I think teaching it, I wanted to make sure I kind of did it justice. And so looking at the research kind of, it will then again help me in my own practice going forward, kind of, use it in a way that's a bit more informed. But it was also great to see, students and their kind of interest in learning and everything like that. So it's a big combination of why I got into it. But so
and you're hoping to do more of it still at King's?
Yeah, I would like to, definitely. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Sure.
That's really good. So following up from that, Millie wanted to know what advice you've got for her as the academic rep for year one. What advice can you offer her now?
Oh gosh, what advice? That's a very good question, because I think there's the advice I can give to her personally, as in just making sure that as much as you give your time to other people, just making sure you have time for yourself. It's somewhat of a selfless role, because you are, although I've talked about how it's helped me, it takes such a lot, such an amount of your time. And I don't think I kind of realized how much of my own time that it would take to kind of help other people, which, it was totally worthwhile. And I, enjoyed it immensely, but just making sure that you don't kind of sacrifice too much of your own energy, and find that balance. But I think if I then talk about it from a more academic rep side, there are some easy things you can do. I've sent on some essays to you guys, which I think have always been a bit helpful. I'm just trying to think. I think rather than just try and do everything, find out from the groups where they're particularly struggling with. And I think be honest as well, and take responsibility in that if you actually don't feel confident with something, just say, that's probably not for me, but I can direct you somewhere, to get some help. I think I'm just trying to rack my brains, thinking what could be helpful. It feels like a many moons ago.
I think actually, those three pieces of advice are brilliant for Millie, but I think they're also true of being a student as well. If you are struggling with something, and you're not sure that it is that you know the answer to it, or you're not sure you know the answer to the essay question, or how you're going to conduct yourself, go find out from someone else. See if they know the answer. If make time for yourself. Don't just always give, or in the flipping it around to a student. Spend time with your head in the books constantly. Make time for yourself and go out and do some sports, or go to the pub with some friends, or go get a coffee, or all that kind of stuff. And that's really good advice. I think that could be flipped for Millie, but also for anyone else listening to us as well.
So valuable. Just keep yourself sane and be really efficient with your time. I guess it just kind of brings to mind, just about being efficient with your time, is you can reread as much as you want, but I think it's like going to the gym. You can either look at the weights, or you can pick them up and exert yourself. And so example questions, I think, are wonderful, especially if they're written by someone else, because you can write your own questions, write it in a way that either gives you a bit of a hint, or you write to suit your bias. Whereas if I were to, that I guess that would be my main advice if you want people to really take on information, is get them to have to really use their brain, try and dig in right at the back. There's some kind of little pearl somewhere, and write it down. I think that would be useful.
Good. Thank you. So Millie wanted to say just a final thing. She wanted to say that any year one students listening or watching this video podcast, feel free to contact her. She's very happy to help, and she wants to make herself available to you. And similarly, if you're an MSc student, Norman is your man. I don't know Norman's surname, unfortunately. He's your man. He's the academic student for the MSCs as well. So one final question for you, Archie, if that's okay.
Sure.
What are your top tips for studying physiotherapy at King's or anywhere else?
Oh, yeah, of course, I'll have to start by saying, obviously, it's all, we're all individual and we have our own way. So I can only speak broadly. Again, like we've spoken about before, I think giving yourself some time and some freedom it's a fine line, isn't it, between giving yourself enough time to relax and kind of recharge, but also don't just be on charge the whole time. Yeah, and again, I think this is also there's a good book. It's called I think it's called The Art of Learning, Make It Stick or something, and it's just goes through some of the research behind how best to learn and use your time efficiently. And one of those is staged like repeating of material, but also testing yourself and building upon that. I find, and this I did before my first year exams, which it was really helpful. I found a spot in a library back home. They had a whiteboard, and I I would choose a subject and pretend to teach it to a bunch of chairs.
Sure.
And I would go along, let's say it's membrane potentials, and I'd be talking about ions going across one way and the other way, and then go.
Yeah.
I would suddenly stop and go, and then I was and that process would continue until eventually I could finish it and go, okay, I feel absolutely comfortable with that. So in whatever way that is, I find, again, and like with the academic rep side, if you can say it out loud and teach it to someone or answer a question, you're probably quite comfortable with that. So I guess that would be taking on information from a sense of going into not practicals, what am I thinking of? Placements. I think when you do your practicals, and this is what I kind of said when I was teaching the manual muscle testing, don't just, because you're working on a bunch of healthy bodies, you're going to be seeing people who have neurological conditions, spinal cord injuries, respiratory ICU acquired weakness, all kinds of stuff. When you're doing these tests, and there's obviously, we could talk a lot about special tests and things like that. What would you expect to find, or what would it mean if someone came back with, I don't know, a 3 out of 5? How would that change your kind of prescription? How would it change your assessment? Because it's very easy to go to someone saying active range of motion. Okay, cool. That's abduction full. What if someone were to do this? What does that mean? Sorry, I realize if this is a podcast, if someone can't do something fully over their head.
It's mostly a video podcast, but you're right. There are people who listen to it as well. So,
but what would you expect to find if, and what would it mean if someone couldn't, or something came back that was, in air quotes, abnormal?
Yeah.
Because I found that I didn't do that. We would just go along, do the bread and butter stuff, and then when it came to someone in a my MSK placement, let's say that's where my bias is, and suddenly there's someone who can't do it, and you go, oh God, I wasn't prepared for that.
No.
So yeah, making it relevant, I guess. I could have just summarized that really much more efficiently.
That's great. That's great. I love it.
Yeah. I guess that would be my main things. I'm sure I'll think of plenty afterwards.
You'll think of loads of responses. So
yeah.
If you've got any, feel free to message me. I'll put them in the outro or something like that.
Yeah, and my King's emails, I think it's still active and will be. So if there are any questions for me, now I've graduated, I'm always happy to take those. It's like archie.james@kcl.ac.uk. So
brilliant.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Archie. So thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Great to speak to you.